which is, it's one of our favorite things to do. I know it's one of your favorite things to do. It's one of the special perks of Ride IQ membership, which is a Ride IQ member video review. So you can get direct feedback from a coach on your riding videos. And this can really be like an anything goes. Like maybe, you know, it could be, how am I riding? What do you think my horse, like, how does my horse look? What exercises should I be doing? And we have Jon Holling here with us, and Jon is no stranger to member video reviews. Jon, thank you for joining us and being up for doing this tonight.
Thanks for having me. I hope my internet's holding up well enough. It sounded a little bit glitchy on my end. Am I okay?
You look good. You sound good.
All right.
We'll keep you posted. And you know, I said Jon's no stranger to this. You know that because when we like prepare guests before we go live. To prepare Jon, Kinsey goes, you know the drill, and she hits go live. So, which is true. He does know the drill. And we got a lot of great videos from members leading up to this. So I know we'll have an action-packed hour. If you are relatively new to Ride IQ, or if this is your first Ask an Expert that you're joining, welcome. I'm sure you know Jon. Jon is a beloved Ride IQ coach. I don't know if we really share this outwardly, but Jon and some of the other coaches have kind of a friendly competition going for who gets the most listens each month and each quarter. And Jon is frequently at the top of that leaderboard. So he has quite a fan club inside Ride IQ and out of Ride IQ. Although, Jon, I did watch the Jon and Rick show the other day, and I know that must have hit pretty hard.
I had a feeling, which is why I went there, because I thought it'd be funny, but it was interesting. It wasn't as funny after she did it. So Keegan, I still love you, but I'm gonna try to beat Kyle with Keegan. This seems like a personal thing now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I laughed pretty hard when it happened. So I thought it was pretty entertaining. And for anyone who hasn't seen that episode of the Jon and Rick show, Jon had a Ride IQ member, Keegan, who, if you're in the Facebook group, you likely know Keegan, on the show, and asked Keegan, kind of like while they were recording, asked Keegan who her favorite Ride IQ coach is. And Kyle and Lauren came out on top.
Well, it was worse than that. It was Kyle was her favorite. And then it was like, plus, Jon, not to make it worse, but also if I was just like asked who I wanted, and I'm like, I didn't ask you this, Keegan.
Yeah.
Like if I was asked who I want to hang out with, it would be Lauren. I'm like,
totally.
So I'm not your favorite and you don't even want to hang out with me. I appreciate you doing me a favor and coming on the show.
Yeah, totally. Well, I would say that you're at the top of my list for people I'd want to hang out with. As other than sometimes you think that I think you think I'm like mad at you or judging you. Sometimes you've made that comment before. So, but you're one of my favorite people to hang out with. So hopefully
that says more about me than you.
All right. Well, with that, I don't want to take away time from people who sent their videos in. One thing I do want to say, though, before we get started is thank you to everyone who does send videos in for these things. I know it's like you're putting it out there, and it's kind of a vulnerable thing to do. And this is a very safe space, and all positive things will come from it. You'll learn from it, and everyone else gets to learn from your video too. So thank you if you sent in a video. And with that, I will hand it over to Kinsey to introduce our first video.
Well, it only seems appropriate, and this was not planned, but our first video is from the one and only Keegan Oswald.
Keegan, you're terrible.
So we'll put her up there, and then I'll read it. So this is Keegan on her horse Bones. He's 12 years old, and he's an off-the-track thoroughbred. They've shown through training, and they had a year-long rehab for navicular, coming back to work slowly. She says, Bones and I, this is their beginner novice round at Florida Horse Park. Any tips for horses that refuse to do lead changes 90% of the time? Also, she needs tips for riding the tighter jackknife turns with a horse that goes like a freight train.
Got it. All right. So let's watch this video. First thing I'd say about just doing lead changes in general as I'm watching this is there's so many pieces involved in doing a lead change, and it really, for some horses, can be a little bit of a life quest. I've had horses that I've ridden advanced that still didn't do terribly good lead changes, particularly in the show jumping. So I think the one thing is you have to be patient. But I'm going to watch the rest of this before I get really rolling on what to do. I will say, like right there, Keegan, you went through that turn on the counter canter, and I would have made a trot transition and done a simple change. That was beautiful. Okay, so not too surprisingly, the horse seems it's a thoroughbred, right, off the track, and so it seems a little more comfortable on its left lead than its right. That said, you did go through the one corner that I was talking about on the right lead, turning to the left. So I think, little story, when I was in my 20s, I would get sent horses a lot up in Wisconsin because they have sort of like a B circuit hunter world up there. And so a lot of people would send me horses and get me to teach them to do changes. And I learned pretty quickly to tell those people no, because the best that I could really realistically do in short order to teach a horse a change was to kind of throw it from an off balance canter into another off balance canter. So when I'm schooling my horses at home, whether it's a novice horse or an advanced horse, anytime that I jump a fence, when you land, you should land and put your new inside leg on your horse, realistically 2 to 3 strides before you jump the fence, but certainly once you've landed off of the fence, so that you land and your horse is leg yielding away from the leg that is going to be the new inside leg. Then if your horse offers a flying change, great. But if it doesn't, just do a nice, simple change, be patient with it, yield it over, and then ask it for the new lead to finish that simple change. I also do that at the end of my course. So every single time that I'm schooling a horse, I am landing, I'm thinking about my new inside leg, I'm leg yielding it over, I'm getting down into the saddle. The one thing I'd say watching that round is once you were into the saddle and sitting on your horse, you had a really lovely connection. But I felt like as you landed away from the fence, there were a few times where you got a little tight, the connection got a little tight, and then you were kind of sitting, bouncing on the horse for a couple strides. And that to me is a big part of this, is you have to get down into the saddle, soften your horse's back with your seat, a lot of no stirrup work, not necessarily jumping, but with the flat work will help with that to get your horse's back softer. And then as well, I think that video that you sent was from a schooling event that we did. Possibly it looked like one of the pop shows because it wasn't quite as decorated. But even if it wasn't, even if it was just the regular beginner novice at a recognized horse show, I think you want to always approach the events as if they're just preparation for the next event. So like I said, in that situation where you jump the fence and you had to roll back to the next line, personally, I would have landed, leg yielded over. The horse didn't offer the change. I would have trotted and picked up the new lead before I continued on to the next fence, even risking the pole at that point, because at the end of the day, you want this horse to be a better horse 6 weeks, 6 months from now. And if you get your horse more rideable between the jumps, then it's going to be that much easier in the future. So it's not a short-term thing to me to teach a horse a lead change. Like I said, I used to do a lot of this. I would do it over poles. I would do it into rails, trying to get the horse to understand to swap the lead. But in reality, if you have a better canter and a better connection and you get your horse to understand to leg yield off of that new inside leg, then that lead change is almost going to correct itself. I can tell you, honestly, I have not taught a horse to do flying changes in years, because if I ride them correctly and I ride them balanced and they understand to move off the inside leg, the lead change is a byproduct of all of that work. And it becomes a pretty easy thing for them to do. Now, to get them to do it cleanly in the dressage, sometimes that can be a little bit of a trick, but for show jumping, I have not taken a day and said, okay, I'm going to work on this horse to do a change. I just work on the quality of the canter and moving off the inside leg and the rideability, and then the change, it sorts itself out. A lot of simple changes in that horse's future is what I would say.
That is very interesting. I love the description. And I just looked up in the Ride IQ app. You have 2 great no stirrup exercises already in the app, 2 different lessons. And I think there might be more no stirrups to come for anybody who also wants to be practicing that.
That's loads of
Wants
fun.
to or knows that they should be.
Right. It's like eating your vegetables.
It's like eating your vegetables. It's good for you.
Right.
Next up, we have a video from the one and only Lauren Romanelli. She's riding.
Saw she was going to post one. This is great.
I'm so excited. So this is Act 3, aka Pip, a 13-year-old off the track thoroughbred. Lauren said, I bought him off the track as a 6-year-old and have produced him myself with lots of lessons. Pip has been my first FEI horse and has given me so many miles at the level. He can be tricky on the flat, but there's no horse I'd rather take out of the box. This was at a 2-star long at Tryon a few weeks ago, hoping to do some intermediates this summer. Or IP, is that intermediate? Or is that the level between intermediate and prelim?
IP is intermediate dressage and show jumping and preliminary cross country.
Okay, so that's what she's going for this summer, as we have 20 some starts at prelim and a 2-star under our belt now. I have no specific questions, but feedback is always appreciated, especially while contemplating a move up. Quite the jumper. That was the first time I was able to look up and watch.
Yeah, he's got a lovely jump. She got a beautiful connection with him. Looks really good. And that's a big, spooky ring. Especially like when it's at an event like this where their stands aren't full. I find that almost scarier for the horses. Uh-oh.
That's it, I think, right, Kins?
That's it. Okay. All right. So first thing, well, the very first thing I'd say is what a bummer to go in and have the first fence down, because that was a beautiful round. It's a lovely jumping horse, and that does happen in that ring. I actually remember going in there a few years ago I think it was a horse trial in the preliminary ring. It was a beautiful jumping horse. And stopped at the first fence. And I think that happens sometimes. I was so mad. It happens sometimes in that sort of arena. They have a very small warm up on the other side. And it's a little bit like down in a hole, and the horses get very stressed out. And then you go through a tunnel and you enter this basically giant hockey rink of an arena, and the horses get sort of looking up into the stands, and they sometimes can just get a little distracted and bump that first pole. I don't know that there's much you could have done about that. That to me is about needing to put the horse in that situation time and time again so it gets comfortable and understanding that you're going to be there for it. And with that said, I think Lauren did Lauren did a really good job being there for the horse. The connection looked really good. You were getting down into the saddle. There was no arguing and fighting in the bridle. It looked like the connection was actually really nice and soft and supple. Obviously you can always work on improving those things and getting that better and better, but it looks like to me, Lauren's in for a pretty exciting season, to be honest. Like from watching that video, I think going to the IP is a great idea. You can see from watching it that the horse must have a lot of experience at the level. Like she said, it had done, I think you said 20. And that shows. And so the one thing I would say just to everybody that's here watching these videos is, as you watched Lauren's round, if you were thinking, wow, that looks really good, I wish my horse would go that well, she's done 20 events at the level. So there's no substitute for experience. And I was taught long ago, you're better to upgrade a year too late than a day too early. And to me, this would be a great example of that. So I think from what I've seen, have fun going intermediate, because you look ready to go in the show jumping anyway.
Get it, girl. That was so fun to watch. I was smiling the whole time. Once I was able to look up to watch that round. What a cool horse.
Yeah, it was great.
And rider. What a cool horse and rider.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to pull up Grace next. So this is Grace, and let me make her video bigger. Oh, okay. This is Grace, and she said a little bit about her horse and Grace. He's a 21-year-old off-the-track thoroughbred. A lot of thoroughbreds tonight. I got him 7 years ago and brought him up through the levels. We've been doing training level for the past 4 years. I had hopes of moving up, but then we went through a bad series of show jump issues despite him usually going double clear. Refusals, falls, one CR that all kept us from actually getting to the cross country. Now I am just enjoying my time with him and getting out to shows when I can. This video is from a show last fall, our first time doing a championship. My main question is about his shape. I have been told by 2 different trainers that he often jumps up rather than out. Luckily, he is so scopy that it's never been much of an issue, but I do think if he used his body more effectively, he would get into less situations where he scares himself. I've tried low, wide oxes at home, and he jumps just as big over those. Thanks.
All right.
And Grace just said hello in the chat, so she's here with us.
Hey, Grace. This looks like a wet, rainy day, too. Okay. All right. So the first thing that I would say is the horse appears in this video, and it was a little bit hard to see, I'll be honest, in the beginning of the course because it was the opposite side of the ring, and so it was a little bit small. But when you get to the second half of the course, it looks like your horse drifts to the right pretty good. So that'd be one thing I'd check. And I remember another little funny story because I think I have time for these. I'm supposed to be moderately entertaining. I remember years ago, I got to ride in a clinic with George Morris, and we had a horse that was drifting, and it might have been mine, but I don't remember. Anyway, I remember George said to the group, and it was a group of some pretty amazing horsemen and then me. And the question was, if you have a horse that drifts, what's the first thing you should do? And so I think one of us said you should angle the fence the opposite way. And another person said you should work on gymnastics with big, tall cross rails to keep your horse straight. And another person said you should use straightening poles on the landing. And George looked at us all and he shook his head and he said, you call the vet. The first thing you do if you have a horse that drifts is you call the vet. What's wrong with you people, right? And he gave us this old George yelling thing. But there was something to that. And I think the point is, it looks like your horse drifts a bit to the right. Make sure you're on top of all of the veterinary stuff and that there's nothing you could do to help him out that way. Assuming you've done that, and I'm sure you have, assuming that you've done that, then I think you do go to all those other suggestions about straightening, paying attention to it. One of the most simple things that you can do before getting worried about setting up crazy lines and straightening poles and things is when we're riding to a fence, we focus on our line and our canter and our distance and our rhythm, and we ride up to the fence. And then inevitably all of us, when we get there and we get that perfect place that we want to jump from, when we feel that great feeling, we all take a breath and we focus on the next thing. And then the horse drifts. You need to make sure that you're focusing on where you're going to land as well. So not just like looking off in the distance at a tree you want to land to, but for me, if I have a student whose horse is drifting a lot, one of the first things that I work on is I want you, as you come through the turn, to focus on your fence. When you know the fence is taken care of, then I want you to think about where do you want your horse to put its front feet when it lands. And I usually try to envision a circle that's maybe 2 feet wide in diameter, maybe 3 feet wide in diameter. And I want you to imagine you're going to place your horse's feet into that circle. You have to be a little careful that it doesn't cause you to look down and lean forward, but I want you to really be aware of where you want to land because we're all hyper aware of where we want to take off. We want to take off on this colored stripe or that nick of wood or whatever, but then we kind of give up on it on the landing side. So I think straightness is a big piece of this. And then the other thing is I would definitely be working on the gymnastics. You talk about shape with your horse. And I know you said this is a horse with some miles. I think you said he was 20. I think that's right. Is that right, Jessa?
21.
21.
Okay. So sometimes it's tempting with an older horse with experience to kind of go with, well, you know, he knows what he is and he is who he is and he's going to jump the way he jumps. But you can always have them prepped, have them tuned up and ready to go to the event. I don't care if it's my 21-year-old horse or my 15-year-old advanced horse or my 6-year-old preliminary horse. I'm going to make sure that that last jump school before I go to the competition is not if I've done my work correctly to that point. My last jump school is not about go and jump a course. That's the test. My last jump school is about what does this particular horse need preparation wise to be ready to go jump the course. So for your horse, it looks to me like it needs to work on some gymnastics that work on its shape and some gymnastics that work on its straightness. Yes, you want to be cantering some things for sure. There's cantering gymnastics, but I think it needs to be things about creating round shapes and creating straightness. And I know that's a little bit generic because then the question is, well, okay, John, how do I do that? And the answer is not to be too much of a plug for Ride IQ, but there's a lot of really good gymnastics in the Ride IQ app. So go look them up and ride through some of them. They don't have to be overly complicated. Trotting gymnastics are super helpful, and then graduate into some cantering gymnastics. But working on shape and working on canter, and because I know how this goes, right? You go out, you have a round like you just had, where you had a stop early on and you were disappointed by that. You're going to go home, and I know exactly what you did. You went home and you worked on more courses and you galloped around at more stuff and made it happen. And if you didn't, most people did. And in reality, you got to go back and you got to work on the shape and the straightness and building your horse's confidence.
Cool.
One thing Grace added in chat is she said he does drift right, and it's been addressed as far as the vet. She says, I think a product of his negative plantar angles that we're addressing with wedges.
Right. Perfect. Okay. So you're on top of that. The other thing I'd say, just as a little side note, because it happens all the time, we all get a little bit one-handed. You have to be ambidextrous. So if I have a horse that drifts to the right, my stick's in my right hand, so I can hold it against the shoulder a little bit and help hold them straight. If I have a horse that drifts left, my stick's in my left hand. So as simple as that sounds, make sure you're holding your stick in the correct hand as well.
Awesome. I'll get to a couple of comments before we get to the next video. Lauren is also here with us. She said, thank you. Thanks so much for the feedback, John. And then Chris is here and she said, I'm so glad to be here. John, you're my favorite Ride IQ coach.
Oh, I knew somebody liked me. Thank God.
Oh, okay. Thank you all for your comments. Keep them coming. Next up, we have Hannah Peck. I'm loving, I hadn't seen everyone who sent in videos, but all of these people have helped us so much along the way. Hannah's had a lot of conversations with us. So Hannah, I'm excited to watch this video. Kinsey's pulling it up and I'll start reading what Hannah sent. So this is an 18-year-old draft cross running training level for a year. They have their eyes on modified by the end of 2023. This video is from Tryon this past weekend. Hannah said, I'm basically curious as to what part of the puzzle I'm missing. The right drift comes out when she gets nervous or I don't put her in the right spot. I think this says the not water video has the last combination on course. We came up a steep hill to a shark's tooth, 2-stride to a chevron. She drifted hard right on the landing and we put 3 in and jumped the chevron on an angle to get it done. Oh, that was a quick video. I didn't even get to watch it. Kids, can you play it again?
Yeah, let's play that again. So the one thing I'd say just watching this video is the first 2 jumps, she looks like she jumped right of center. And this next jump coming up, you definitely jump right of center. So I wonder how much of this, maybe not that one, it might be the next one. I wonder how much of this right drift is happening all the time and you're not even aware of it. Like there, you're very right of center, which might be because that was the fastest line. I'm not sure, but it looks like you're about to turn left. So I guess I would challenge you to be aware of your straightness all the time. It's not good enough on a horse that drifts for sure to canter into a 16-foot wide jump and not have an exact place on the front of that fence for your line that you intend to jump. So if I'm riding a horse that I know drifts right, I would be jumping those fences center to slightly left of center unless time was an issue and I needed to be up against the red flag to get the clock. And typically at training level, time isn't that much of an issue. You should be able to get the clock and still be straight. So just from watching those few jumps, my guess is you're not paying enough attention to the straightness at the simple fences. And then it comes to get you later on at the more complicated stuff. That usually is the case. Again, I would watch, is this a veterinary thing? Like we were talking about earlier, make sure that you've got the veterinary stuff handled. We're going to assume for this conversation that you do. So then it's about making sure you're doing gymnastics, that you're doing straightness exercises, that you can use guide rails at home to help you with that stuff. But I'm guessing it has more to do with your attention to detail at the simple things is then catching you out when it gets a little bit complicated.
Awesome. Well, Hannah, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And then for now, we'll go on to Debbie. So the next one is Debbie Hornbaker, and we've got 2 videos for her. So I'll pull one up first, and then we'll go to the next one. Debbie says this is her 7-year-old off-track thoroughbred mare. She's a 58-year-old grandmother, and she said, yep, go ahead and shake your head. But I don't know why we'd be shaking our head at that. I have had her for 2.5 years, worked through health and hoof issues. She is now on a natural diet, barefoot, transitioned with glue-ons, and about to put glue-ons back on for summer months. This is one day after a bear trim, and she said her mare, Nikki, might be a touch sensitive in her feet, as the lesson is one day after trim. I should have put her scoop boots in, perhaps. She is a wonderful mare, and we're coming along. Also, I have an right hip injury that messes me up a bit. And she's just looking, I'm guessing she's looking for general feedback. I can replay that one. I also have a second one I can put up first. I don't know, whatever you prefer.
Is it the same horse, same idea?
I believe so.
Okay, let's watch the next one.
Yeah.
What a cute horse, Debbie. Kinsey, while you're pulling that up, I also want to give a shout out to Debbie because Debbie is a frequent attendee of Ask an Expert, and it doesn't go unnoticed because she always has nice comments in the chat. So thanks for doing that, Debbie, and for sending this video in.
It is a beautiful horse. So the one thing I say just as I watch Debbie sort of trot and canter around is I think conformationally, the horse, as a lot of thoroughbreds do, it has a little bit of a low set neck. And so what I really appreciate about the ride is she's not pulling its head down and making it go round. She's riding the balance first, which to me shows that she's actually, I'm assuming the person standing in the middle there is her coach on the ground and is actually riding with someone who really knows what they're talking about because they're riding the horse up into the contact, into a balance. She's got nice hands and isn't getting overly concerned with making the horse round. Now, that said, at some point, I'm assuming that's going to become an issue and you're going to want to get this horse more on the bit, if you would even want to call it that, more on the vertical. But I think the connection is pretty good. I didn't see a lot of flapping reins or bouncing hands, which is super, super important. I would say to help with that connection, and again, it's tough because we get these sort of short little snippets of a video. I would be working that horse through a lot of transitions. So a lot of trot, walk, walk, trot, trot, canter, canter, trot. I wouldn't work in a pace for too terribly long because I think a lot of times when you get them to where they're sort of expecting, oh, when am I going to walk? Oh, when am I going to trot? When am I going to canter? And they turn to the rider more, they listen to the rider more, and then they naturally become more balanced and more connected and rounder, right? And more through. So if I'm being critical of that ride, which again, I think was a pretty nice example of how to ride a young horse to a contact in a nice uphill balance. But if I'm being critical of it, I think you could be doing more transitions, more changes of direction. And getting the horse to be listening to you as the rider more and not kind of going into what I'd call like autopilot, just trotting around the ring, just cantering around the ring. I'd be doing more stuff and not worrying if when you do those transitions, are they perfect? I think that's a big reason we sometimes stay away from doing transitions when we're working horses is we're like, oh, he's got to be softer. He's got to be more through before I can make a transition to walk. He's got to be softer before I can go off to canter. I think it's quite the opposite. If you do those transitions, even if you do them and your horse sticks its head straight in the air, typically if you do those transitions, they improve themselves. And I'm a big advocate for letting the exercise, whether that's on the flat being the transition or in jumping being the fence, letting the exercises do the training for me, as opposed to me feeling like I always have to fix it. And that's something that comes with confidence. Again, I would say when I was 20, I would never have done that. I would have tried to fix it myself. But as I've gotten more experience and I've been in this longer, I've sort of learned that if you just ride correctly, do lots of transitions, sort of changes of directions, things like that, a lot of times that stuff fixes itself and then you don't even have to worry about it. So I would, in those transitions, all I would think about is, are the downward transitions happening in an uphill balanced way? And are the upward transitions happening that when I touch my horse with my leg, it goes instantly? So the downwards can take time. They can get a little inverted. Doesn't matter. As long as you can get them back into that contact and consistent feel in your hand, let those downward transitions take some time. And then the upward transitions need to happen efficiently and when you ask, immediate.
Amazing. I really enjoyed listening to that explanation, and also just like it's always helpful to hear like a coach's insight on how to approach these things, because like you said like you think maybe they need to be in a perfect balance or exactly as soft as you want them to be before asking for that transition. It's like, yes, that's probably exactly what would go through my head and a lot of people's heads. So that was really helpful. So I can only see Facebook user in the chat I'm looking at right now, but I'm sure this is Debbie. She said, "That's great advice. I'm very lazy about transitions. I'll do more. Thank you." And there's a lot of other love coming through the chat too.
Just do tons of transitions. It'll make such a difference.
That's awesome. Okay, Kins, should we move on to the next? Next up, Krista Wilson, who this is fresh off the press video, literally from her lesson today. And awesome. It says, "This is Sella and I in my stadium lesson today. I'm working on flying changes. We had practiced them once each way without the jumping, and this was trying to put the flying change together with the jumping. She said, I'd appreciate feedback on anything else as well. Thank you." And then added, "We're beginner, novice, and would like to get to training level eventually." What a beautiful arena, Krista. This is great.
That's an awesome place. Okay, so maybe we play that one more time while I'm talking, if that's okay, Kinsey. So the first thing I'd say, aside from beautiful place and beautiful horse, is a little bit what I was talking about earlier with the changes. This is a little further along, but as you land off this line here, you'll see when you land here, you land and you stay a little bit perched out of the saddle. Right now, I would be leg yielding to the left. You turned left, you sort of took the reins and went left and then went right and almost put your horse off balance to get the change as opposed to in balance to get the change. And you'll see here again, when you land off this fence, the horse falls right? Even though you're on the right lead, the horse fell to the right. So it doesn't matter at that last line that your horse landed on the right lead. You still fell into the inside, cut the turn. And I don't think it was because you were whipping around to do the jump off to win the class. It was because you were done and you were thinking, oh, I did a change over there. He was maybe a step late, but I got that nice change. And then he landed, and wasn't it wonderful? He's on the right lead. Good boy. So a couple things that I would work on in that round right there. When you land off that first line off the third fence, I would be stretching up. I would be leg yielding to the left, creating bend around my right leg, suppling my horse, getting him softer and more through, bringing the haunches to the inside so that you feel like the horse is wrapped around your right leg with your right leg in the girth, then I would ask for the change. Then down that last line, this is the most important part because it's the last thing that that horse remembers before it jumps the next time. When I jump that last fence, whether I'm on the right lead or the left lead or the correct lead on the right lead, I would land, I would leg yield off of my right leg. I would supple him around again because it doesn't matter if he's on the incorrect lead. You want to do that to get the correct lead. If he's on the correct lead, I'm confusing myself here. If he's on the correct lead, you still want to have a horse that's soft and balanced to go to the next fence. He doesn't know he's done until you've told him. So I would be suppling him, pushing him off of that right leg, and I finish every single course cantering a circle, the direction that I want to be going, trotting a circle, the direction I want to be going, and then making a nice transition to walk. And if the horse has been wonderful, I give them a pet and I walk off. If the horse has been a little bit strong and bullish, I make a transition to halt and I calmly rein back and then I walk off. But it's so important. We always get told like jumping is just flat work with jumps in the middle. And that is such a simple way of saying what I'm trying to say here, which is I want to land and I want to have my horse perfectly connected with me as soon as possible, moving off of my inside leg, supple and round. And while you got that change off that first fence, to me, it was okay. It wasn't as good as you can do because you can push that horse off that inside leg. You can get it soft and supple and you can make it even better. Don't allow yourself, and I do it. I do this all the time. Don't allow yourself to land off that first line and you get into the corner and you just kind of pull the left rein and then swap over to the right. You got to push him off that inside leg and those changes are going to be automatic. It's a beautiful horse. You're a really nice rider. But it's about having a better connection from your leg and seat into your hand and sort of getting that suppleness and that flat work there. And if you land and you can't quite get it done, I wouldn't be afraid to put a circle in before you went down that next line to make sure you really got it exactly the way you want.
I love that. And I always want I want you guys to go and work on these things like Jon just said, and then come back and send more videos because I want to be kept up to date.
Yeah.
So Jon, one update is Hannah, who we did, she was the cross country video. She sent in another video for us to look at just in case there was additional color there. So let me put that one up.
She's probably jumping left of center.
Yeah.
And she'll be like, see, you were wrong. Yeah, see, so a little right there again, Hannah. Very coordinated. Good use of the stick. That's a long way across that water at Tryon, isn't it? Good, and see there again, went a little right, didn't it? That looked pretty centered. Okay, so one thing I'll say for those who haven't been to Tryon, Hannah just galloped across a bridge, and those are the scariest bridges in the world. So well done getting across that, because I've thought I had a horse one time I thought was going to actually Profit. I thought was going to jump off the bridge. So that's impressive. You got that done. But I will say of those jumps, again, I think you were a little bit right of center. So make sure you're paying attention to that straightness, where you want to take off, where you want to land. Because it will come to get you again later. But it's a beautiful horse. I thought the balance, the connection, the shape over the fences was quite good. Seeing Hannah jump sort of towards us that way a little bit closer sort of showed off your position, which I think is quite nice. You did an excellent job with the stick into that water, because you could see that's a lot of water for a horse to look at, and it did back the horse off a little bit, and you reacted instantly and fairly and appropriately with the stick to get that done. And then that skinny on the way out with the cutout under it. I keep hitting my microphone. I'm sorry. The the skinny with the cutout, the sort of like an aqueduct cutout under it, that can be quite spooky as well. And I thought the horse was wonderful to just canter down there. But again, just being picky, there's that flower right in the center. And it looked to me like you were a little bit off the right side of that skinny. And that's one of those things where, I mean, we all have horses that have a drift here or a drift there, and you just got to make sure you're staying on top of it. It's not always something that's fixable. In fact, I will say most of the time it's not fixable. And by that, I mean something that you can like, okay, I've corrected. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's something that probably will be in that horse its entire career. But that's okay as long as you're aware of it and you stay on top of it. I remember having a horse years ago that I bought and it drifted right as a training level horse. And I took it to Kentucky around the 5-star and it drifted right at the keeper's brush and took out the red flag at the keeper's brush. And I swear to God, I jumped it in the middle, but it drifted so hard right that it got it. And I was well aware of what I was sitting on, but you know, you just have to be constantly trying to correct these things and stay on top of them. So I think for you, my guess is when you get into trouble, it's because you've let it snowball a little bit around the course and haven't, maybe in your preparation for the event, but also probably in the lead up as you're going around the course, have you stayed really on top of that straightness? Because those 2 video clips you sent, you look right of center just a little bit over every fence, and that can add up.
Awesome. We have still a lot of action happening in the chat. I also noticed that Hannah's coach Steph Counts is watching as well. So you get to be speaking to the coach and the student, and Hannah's a coach herself. So it's really full circle in that case. And then we got some comments in chat. I'm sure this one is from Krista. It says, "Thank you. I'm trying to use my legs more and my hands less." So that's the horse that we just watched a stadium round. And she said, "Your lessons are always helpful to me because of the specific and exact words you use about rider position. I listen to some lessons over and over again until I pick apart all the rider position instructions."
Awesome.
And then Hannah said, "Thank you." Steph said, "That's my Hannah." So yeah, good things happening. And that concludes the videos that we had for today. Jon, you're so good at that, which is no surprise, but I really love having you on for member video reviews. So thank you for doing it.
I'm always happy to do it.
There's so much to learn from watching other people, and especially watching other people and getting the feedback is so helpful. So we will continue to do these every 6 weeks or so. So anyone watching who didn't do a video today, or even if you did, make sure you keep track of those videos so you can be part of it whenever you'd like to. And then I also wanted to mention, I know everyone knows like Jon is amazing rider, phenomenal coach, great podcaster. I want to make sure everyone has noticed his reels lately on social, because it's like he's a master of everything once you see his Instagram game. So if you haven't been keeping up with Jon, make sure you do. Jon, what is the source of inspiration for your social media?
I mean, I like people giving me positive things to make me feel better about myself, because I have really low self-esteem.
Well, we'll be there liking and commenting. The Ride IQ fan will be in your comments.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I was going to ask you guys, I'm going to do this live, right? Should I be like hashtagging something for Ride IQ on my reels, since I'm such like a viral sensation on social media?
Oh my gosh. We'll have to make sure that the app can handle that sort of traffic.
Right.
So we'll give you a green light, but my favorite hashtag for Ride IQ, and we probably should get it to catch on, is Ride IQ Love.
Ride IQ Love. Now, is that like Ride IQ LOVE, or do I put a little heart at the end?
It's LOVE.
Okay. And so am I allowed to use that hashtag?
Please do that. Okay. I think that might even get the hashtag.
I got the impression from your first answer that you weren't sure you really wanted me to hashtag you. So I just want to make sure, because I have low self-esteem.
No, we absolutely do. And I truly think it would be fun if we started, like we haven't been committed enough to a specific hashtag, but that's my favorite hashtag. Kinsey, is that the one that you like?
I was thinking Ride IQ wins, like people when people post about their wins related to Ride IQ or anything, they do hashtag Ride IQ wins.
I like that better, because you guys do the Ride IQ thing, and I was worried that would be the hashtag, because it's a little.
By
Love
you
you,
guys, you
Doug.
mean our Australian team really pushes the Ride IQ.
The Ride. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not like, oh yeah, tough guy. It's like, oh, Ride IQs. So, Ride IQ wins is pretty cool.
Okay, you heard it here first. On Hanging with Jon tonight, we just established that the official hashtag of Ride IQ is Ride IQ wins. And
Wow.
we would love to see some more people out there using Ride IQ wins, including you, Jon. That would be great. You'll get it to catch on. The Ride IQs thing, we took a group picture together in Kentucky. Jon was there, Kyle was there, probably 20 or 30 Ride IQ members were there. And I asked everyone to say Ride IQs on 3, and both Kyle and Jon said absolutely not. So, which is fair. So if you like Ride IQs, you can keep embracing that. I will certainly keep embracing that. But the hashtag is Ride IQ wins. And with that, maybe everyone head off to Instagram and spend the rest of your night there scrolling through reels. Jon, thank you again, and thank you to everyone who participated and joined.